Good morning all of you. This video is in continuation of the previous video of thermodynamics part 1 where we discussed the main concepts, an introduction to thermodynamics, the different terms we use in thermodynamics such as system, surroundings, what are the different types of systems, then different macroscopic properties, their classification and various types of processes. So this is in continuation of that previous video where we can go into details of first law of thermodynamics, second law, the concepts like entropy, free energy, etc. Before studying first law of thermodynamics, we should know the different types of energies associated with a system. So total energy of any system is the sum of all forms of energy such as thermal energy, mechanical energy, kinetic energy, potential energy, electrical, magnetic, chemical and nuclear energy. So the sum total of all these forms of energy contribute to total energy of a system. And for system, we typically we deal with the main types of energy, the sum of energy or let's say the total energy is the sum of internal energy, kinetic energy and potential energy. So other forms of energies are negligible and the total energy thus we can say is the sum of internal energy, kinetic energy and potential energy. Internal energy is represented by the letter U. Sometimes it is represented by the letter E also. Kinetic energy, we know it is half mv square and potential energy is mgh. Hence, the first law of thermodynamics can be stated in terms of energy, and we know first law of thermodynamics is same as that of law of conservation of energy. That is, energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be transferred from one form to another. So we can say the total energy of the universe remains constant. That is the essence of first law of thermodynamics. The total energy of the universe is constant. And the net change in energy is equal to the sum of heat that flows across a boundary and the work done. So this is the mathematical representation of first law of thermodynamics. Mathematically we can say the change in internal energy that is equal to the sum of heat transfer and also work done. That means we can define it in other ways. The internal energy of a system can be increased in two ways, either by supplying heat to the system or by doing work on the system. So heat transfer is represented by the letter Q and work done is denoted by the letter W. So we can say delta U is equal to Q plus W. And we know work is a function of pressure and volume. So we can write dW, a small change in work dW is equal to minus P dV, minus P delta V. This is called work of expansion. That is work done by the system. Work done means we can have two types of work. Work can be done on the system and work can be done by the system. Suppose you have a gas kept in a cylinder fitted with a piston. So when you push the piston, now we know it is the work done on the system. So work done on the system means it is work of compression. Work of compression and it is positive. Whereas if the piston expands by itself due to expansion of gas inside, that work is called work done by the system and it is the work of expansion. Work of expansion is given a sign of negative, minus P delta V. So usually in thermodynamics we refer work of expansion, work done by the system, and it is given the sign dW is equal to minus P dV. So by substituting the value of W, we can restate the first law of thermodynamics as delta U equals Q minus P delta V. Suppose if the reaction is carrying out or if the process is carrying out at constant volume, So at constant volume delta V equal to 0. So the second term will be 0 and we can say delta U is equal to QV. That means the heat transfer at constant volume, that is equivalent to the change in internal energy of the system. Now we have another term in thermodynamics, important term, that is enthalpy. Enthalpy literally it is the heat content of the system, and more specifically we can say it is the total energy, that is the sum of internal energy and pressure volume energy. So we can write enthalpy equation as H. Enthalpy is denoted by the letter H and it is the sum of U plus PV, internal energy and pressure volume energy. And in thermodynamics, we usually come across with change in a property. Rather than absolute property, we deal with change in property because absolute properties are difficult to measure. So we can measure change in a property. So in the same way, here we can write delta H, change in enthalpy, delta H is equal to delta E plus delta PV. So when you expand this expression, you will get delta H is equal to delta E plus P delta V plus V delta P. And usually we carry out the processes at constant atmospheric pressure. Pressure will be constant and that will be equal to 1 atmosphere. So in such a case, we can write delta P equal to 0. Change of pressure is 0. That is V delta P equal to 0. Then we can rewrite the equation as delta H equals delta E plus P delta V. And we have the expression for delta E from first law, that is delta E equals Q plus W. So if the work, we have already stated, work means it is the work of expansion and it is having a equation, that is W equals minus P delta V. So we can write delta E as Q minus P delta V. So when you substitute this value of delta E, that is Q minus P delta V, in the previous equation of delta H, you will get delta H is equal to Q minus P delta V plus P delta V, that is Q. That means if we carry out the process at constant pressure, the heat change at constant pressure will be equal to the change in enthalpy of the system. So we have got two equations. In the previous slide we have seen heat change at constant volume QV equal to delta U, and now heat change at constant pressure QP equals delta H. So we can write Q, that is heat change at constant volume and pressure, can be related as internal energy change and enthalpy change. Now let's see what is a spontaneous process. So a spontaneous process means a process which can take place by itself under a given set of conditions. So that is called a spontaneous process. That means any process which can take place by itself without any driving force. So a spontaneous process does not mean that the process takes place instantaneously. That doesn't mean, but the meaning is it can take place by itself. For example, evaporation of water from rivers. So it occurs spontaneously, and burning of coal. So these are all spontaneous processes which take place by itself under a given set of conditions. Now let's see the direction of spontaneous process. Most of the spontaneous processes are exothermic in nature. Exothermic means these processes are associated with a liberation of heat, liberation of energy. So delta H will be negative, as in the example of burning of coal. Carbon burns in excess oxygen to form carbon dioxide with a liberation of an amount of energy which is equivalent to 393.5 kilojoule. This much amount of energy will be released to the surrounding. That is why it is having a negative sign. So we can say most of the spontaneous processes are exothermic. But that doesn't mean that all spontaneous processes are exothermic. We do have spontaneous processes which are endothermic in nature. For example, evaporation of water, melting of ice, mixing of gases. These processes are endothermic in nature. Endothermic means in order for such a process to occur, energy must be absorbed. So that means in these examples, these are not taking place in the direction in which energy is lowered. That is, usually for a reaction, for a process to be spontaneous or for a process to be feasible, what we expect is the product should have energy lower than the reactants. That means as a result of a spontaneous process, we expect an energy release. But there are so many processes such as evaporation of water, melting of ice, mixing of gases. All these are endothermic. That means in order for these processes to occur, energy must be supplied, energy must be absorbed. So that means that all spontaneous process will not take place in the direction in which energy is lowered. So something else is also matter there. So we can say when we look into these examples, here when you consider the reactant stage and product stage, the randomness or disorder of the system increases as a result of the process. For example, melting of ice. Ice is in the solid state. Upon melting, it is converted to liquid stage. That means from solid to liquid, the randomness or disorder increases. Similarly, evaporation of water. From liquid state, water molecules are converted to gaseous state. So, in the gaseous state, they are less, or we can say the ordering is less, or randomness is more. So, in all these processes, in all these endothermic processes, the randomness of the system increases as a result of the process. So, we can generalize that the endothermic reaction can occur spontaneously if the extent of disorder outweighs the increase of energy. That means even if energy is increasing as a result of the process, if that is not, or we can say if the randomness increase, the increase in the randomness is more than the increase of energy, then the reaction can occur spontaneously. Okay, so the condition is not just it should take place in a direction in which energy is low, but that is not the only condition. It can occur, a process can occur spontaneously if the disorder of the system increases. And if the disorder of the system outweighs the increase of energy, then the endothermic process also occurs spontaneously. Now, the disorder, as we said, the measure of disorder, that is called entropy. So, we can use a term called entropy in order to indicate this measure of randomness or disorder of the system. And we can say higher the entropy of the system, more disordered it is. Entropy is denoted by a letter S, and we can write a change in entropy delta S, that is equal to Q reversible by T. That means it is a ratio of reversible heat transfer to temperature. And the entropy of a system can decrease. Usually we say entropy of a system goes on increasing, but it can decrease provided the entropy of the surroundings increases. So that means when we consider entropy, we should say not just entropy of system, we should consider the entropy of surroundings also. So we can say the total entropy of the universe always increases. So in the course of every spontaneous process, the total entropy of the system increases. So here comes the second law of thermodynamics. So the second law of thermodynamics states that the universe always becomes more disordered in any real process, or in other words we can say the total entropy of the universe goes on increasing in the course of every spontaneous process. So that is second law. So as per first law of thermodynamics, total energy of the universe is a constant. And as per second law of thermodynamics, total entropy of the universe goes on increasing. Now, let's see the condition for entropy and equilibrium. So, the mathematical representation of equilibrium in terms of entropy is delta S is equal to 0. So, at equilibrium, change in entropy is assumed to be 0. This is because we know during the course of any process, the entropy of the system goes on increases, and equilibrium condition means this entropy becomes a maximum value. That is, S will be maximum so that there won't be any more change in entropy, so that delta is equal to 0 at equilibrium. Now let's see this equation, this entropy to see or to compare the entropy values of a non-spontaneous and spontaneous process. Let's take the typical example of freezing of water. So the freezing of water, we know the three temperatures, the process conditions given at three temperatures. One is at 272 Kelvin, 273 Kelvin and 274 Kelvin. Delta S system and delta S surrounding is given along with delta S universe. From the delta S universe, that is total delta S value, we can see at 273 Kelvin, delta S is equal to 0. That means freezing of water is at equilibrium at a temperature of 273 Kelvin. And if the temperature is 272 means just below 0 degree. So below 0 degree, we know freezing of ice occurs spontaneously. It is feasible. So delta S value is positive. Whereas above 273, at a temperature 274, the freezing of water is minus, that delta S value for freezing of water is minus 0.08. That means entropy is negative. That means the process is non-spontaneous at a temperature above 273 Kelvin. So this explains, or this gives a correlation between entropy and feasibility of a process. In terms of delta S value, we can predict whether a process is spontaneous or not. If delta S is positive, the process is spontaneous. If delta S is 0, the process is at equilibrium. And if delta S is negative, the process is non-spontaneous. In addition to entropy, we have a more common term or more convenient term to represent feasibility of a reaction, that is called free energy. So free energy gives a direct correlation between spontaneity of a reaction. Free energy means it is the maximum amount of energy that is available for useful work, and it is denoted by the letter G. Delta G represents the change in free energy, and this delta G provides overall feasibility of a chemical reaction. That is the balance between delta H and delta S. So far we have seen that a process, in order for a process to occur, it can be feasible energetically and also entropy wise it can be feasible. Delta H, if delta H is negative, that means exothermic. For an exothermic process, mostly we know and the product will be having lower energy, so it is likely to be spontaneous. And one more condition is there, that is entropy, randomness should increase. So if delta S is positive, then also the system or the process is spontaneous. So we can combine these two terms, that is delta H and delta S, in order to predict the overall feasibility of a reaction, and that is the free energy term. According to Gibbs-Helmholtz equation, we can write delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S. So it gives a more authentic correlation between spontaneity and, or we can say the spontaneity can be more easily predicted using the free energy term. So by calculating the delta G, we can predict whether the reaction is spontaneous or not. So in order for a process to be spontaneous, delta G should be negative. So if you get a negative value of delta G, that means the reaction is spontaneous. So now let's see what are the conditions at which the delta G can be negative. So as per the equation, as per the Gibbs-Helmholtz equation, we know delta G depends on delta H and delta S. So if the delta H value is negative means it is exothermic, and delta S value is positive. That means energetically it is favorable, entropy wise also favorable. So that at all magnitude of this delta H and delta S, the delta G value will be negative. So whatever be the magnitude of delta H and T delta S, the process will be feasible because we have energetically feasible. Delta H is negative and delta S is positive. So it is energetically feasible because it is exothermic process, and entropy wise also it is feasible because randomness increases because of the positive sign. So these two terms are favorable. So we can say at all magnitude of delta H and delta S, the delta G will be negative. Now suppose you have delta H is negative, that means energetically it is favorable, but entropy wise it is negative. Entropy wise it is not favorable. So in order for the overall reaction to be negative, we know delta H is negative and this delta S is positive. So in order for the reaction to be negative, we know delta H should be higher. Delta H should be greater than T delta S. Only then delta G will be negative. Then another condition, it is energetically not favorable. That means the process is endothermic. Delta H is positive, but delta S is also positive. That means entropy wise it is favorable, but energetically not favorable. So in such a condition, in order for the reaction to be overall feasible, T delta S should be greater than delta H. So at all values, at a magnitude of T delta S which is greater than delta H, the reaction is spontaneous. So that means at the values when we have delta H and T delta S, if both are favorable means delta H should be negative, delta S should be positive. In such a case, at all magnitude of delta H and T delta S, the delta G value is negative. If the reaction, if the process is energetically favorable and entropy wise unfavorable, in order for the reaction to be overall feasible, delta H should be greater than T delta S, and otherwise T delta S should be greater than delta H. So we can say these are the conditions at which the reaction or a process becomes spontaneous. So if you know the values of delta H and T delta S, you can predict whether at what all conditions of delta S and delta H the process can be feasible. Whenever we have a negative value of delta G, the process is feasible. So this free energy gives a more authentic correlation of spontaneity. So with this, we can wind up this video. In this, we have discussed the first law of thermodynamics, second law of thermodynamics, terms such as entropy, free energy, etc. So the remaining portions of thermodynamics we can discuss in the coming videos. Thank you.